Hello and welcome to Precontation Points Video Snark. This video series isn't an audiobook. If you thought that it was, please stick around and learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. Our books discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Not the first video, go check out the others. Links are posted below. Chapter 16. Attending lectures is harder than ever. For one thing, I am sick, my body fighting the effects of the fruit and the poisons I am forcing down. Literally nobody is forcing you to drink poison, babe. Literally nobody. The narration brushes over how much time passes. She continues to train and also goes on to other missions for Dain. Locke continues his flirtations. He sits with Taryn and me when we take our lunch, spread out on a blanket watching the sunset. Occasionally he walks me home through the woods, stopping to kiss me near a corpse of fir trees before Maddox's date. Whoa. Hold up. You can't simply toss a casual Locke romance at us like it's nothing. I don't even know what the point of any of this is. If the author is this bored with her own work, then you'd better believe that the readers are bored with it too. However, the narration pauses briefly so that Jude can overhear an argument between Narcissa and Locke about Locke's newfound interest in Jude. In the grand scheme of the political drama unfolding, I care not for the playground squabbles of petulant children that their boyfriends have lost interest in them. For a moment I think I am paranoid, then I see Valerian grinning down at me. He has pushed me out of my chair. I know it just from the look on his face. I have not yet become paranoid enough. This girl has been bullied for the past 10 years by these donkey holes, yet she somehow isn't constantly on her guard and paranoid. Honestly, what a privileged life that she leads if this hasn't resulted in severe psychological problems. Some more time passes, and Jude says that she's running herself ragged doing all these things. Again, I feel like I missed the point where I'm supposed to be on her side about staying here with these people, especially with what happens next. She falls asleep in class and wakes up to Valerian standing over her. He removes a necklace that's supposed to protect her against furs, commanding her before he orders her to first tell Carden that you've won and then push yourself off from the top of the tall tower. Pardon my French, but Jesus fucking Christ. However, as you might have already guessed, this has no effect on her. She kind of brushes past him to leave the room and to not jump to her death, but he seriously doesn't know how to leave well enough alone. He follows after her, calling humans worthless sluts, etc., and then he's randomly surprised when she stabs him in the ribs. As Jude is leaving the room, Taryn finally shows up. She seems surprised to see Valerian doubled over and clutching his bloody side, with Jude holding a bloody knife. Outside, Jude remarks to the readers that Carden seems disappointed somehow, as if he'd been anticipating watching Jude fall to her death. He doesn't seem bothered by the blood or the knife she has, and laughs at the idea that she somehow hurt herself. Jude is baffled as to why Carden doesn't seem to care if Valerian is okay or not. Both of you to assume Carden gives a hoot about anybody. Much like with Locke, I'm certain that Carden hangs around these people simply because it's convenient and they all kind of put up with each other. Later, Jude tells Locke what happened. He insists that their group of friends never planned stuff like that out in advance. Although I'm not quite sure what to make of Jude's comments earlier about how Carden seemed disappointed that she hadn't jumped. Also, I'm certain that Locke is mostly right. He, Carden, and the others all seem to be more along the lines of bored teenagers who don't have enough to keep them properly distracted from causing mayhem. But at the same time, I'm still wary of Locke's motivation in chasing after Jude. Locke randomly takes her to his house, where he says that he's having a party later and that she should stay for it. Jude can't help but think that there's no way that he'd have a party and not invite his friends along, so she tries to think of a way to worm out of it without actually insulting him. However, he's basically all like, "What are you, a child?" And that works, because she's an idiot. As they look around inside the house, he tells her that his dad took off and that his mom died. When he states the cause of her death, Jude thinks that it's the same poison mentioned in the letter she found in Balcon's war room, and then she feels randomly guilty. Although my main complaint with this line of thinking is, how long ago did his mom die? Because by the way he's acting, it wasn't recently. He then takes her to a tall tower. Going up makes Jude think about her weird brush with death earlier, and at the top she can see into the human world. My mother took me when I was a child. She said our world would grow stagnant without yours. Huh, that's interesting, because judging by the way that they treat humans, you'd think that the fairies could survive on their own without humanity. He tells her that she's pretty, but that he's waiting for the other shoe to drop with her, which in my opinion is the author trying to throw us off the trail that he's the evil one who's up to no good. They go back downstairs where they eat, but also snog a lot. Jude is a little embarrassed because of how inexperienced that she is and wonders if he can tell. He asks her to stay, and for a moment she thinks that he means in a romantic way, but then remembers about his party. This time she doesn't shy away from how terrible that his friends are and that she doesn't want to be around them socially, but he insists that they'll get really drunk and that it'll be fun to see them like that. As he offers to go find her a proper dress to wear, she confesses that she likes pretending with him, and goes on to say that they both know that this isn't going anywhere, but that it's fun to pretend. He seems kind of shocked by this, but if he has any objections, he hides it well. He takes her to what used to be his mother's closet and lets her pick out something to wear, but the clothes are kind of rotted away, which is kind of only giving credence to my earlier comment that she died some time ago. Clothes don't become rotted after a few weeks. But as she stares at all this, she rejects his offer for her to wear some of his mom's jewelry. She feels kind of weird. However, she also thinks about what it would be like to be the lady of this house. Locke takes her through the hedge maze, and at the center, the party is already in full swing. Why are you showing up late to your own party? Carden is lying on a blanket, being funneled by two women that Jude doesn't know. The entire thing is so weird, and she tries not to feel the secondhand embarrassment for him. Narcissa shows up and insults Jude. However, her schoolyard taunts are getting to the point of one note and, most importantly, boring. Like, can you seriously not come up with better insults than calling Jude a worm over and over? How old are you, 5? And most importantly, aren't you supposed to be a fairy? You can't come up with some Shakespeare-inspired phrase to fling at her. Literally, the only thing you can come up with is worm. Locke leads her away, saying that he'd promised her better things than being insulted. He then kisses her, and Jude tries to pretend like they aren't at a pretty busy party. Chapter 17. In the morning, Jude wakes up in bed next to Locke. The previous night was mostly a blur, although this feels more like an excuse for the author to not actually write about it. She says that while Carden watched her closely all night, she laughed harder and kissed Locke more than she should have in order to goad him. She returns the dress to the closet where she'd gotten it from and goes downstairs. At the dining room table, she finds Narcissa. The entire thing is awkward since Narcissa and Locke used to be a thing. Narcissa randomly says that she was supposed to end up in a political marriage with Carden, but that he always ruins things. Jude wonders if Narcissa is only now realizing this and thinks that they'd be good together. Jude doesn't bother to go home and only heads off to school. She's grateful for it since she doesn't want to have to answer any questions, although the problem with that is that you gotta go home sometime and answer those questions. In class, the instructor talks about how royal power is passed down. This is an excuse to shove more political world building at us. However, all of these names are thrown at the reader, and they honestly kind of mean nothing. We have no connection with these royal families. The instructor goes on to say that there needs to be at least 2 people from the line to inherit the power, one to wear the crown and the other to put it on. Jude asks her if you can take the crown by force. The teacher says that it's unlikely to work, as the crown usually rejects anybody who isn't an heir of Mab. After class is over for the day, Taryn pushes her aside and says that she bribed the maid to not say that Jude hadn't come home last night. When Jude explains where she'd been all night long, Taryn is a little upset with her. However, Jude calls her out and says that Taryn is in a secret relationship. Jude makes a few guesses, but Taryn again states that she's under some kind of order to not say who. Later, Jude sits in her room. She pulls her knife out to clean it, and in doing so also pulls out a golden acorn that she'd taken from Locke's house. She examines it and says that it's a bit more than a shiny bauble. After a bit of fiddling, she gets it to play a message. It's from Locke's mother, begging for somebody to please take somebody, assumed to be Locke, away from the dangers of the court. Jude puzzles over the note she'd found in Belkin's room from Orla. She thinks about what it could possibly mean and seems really hung up over the idea that they were somehow involved in Lerope's murder. Originally, she and Dan had thought that Belkin had meant to poison Dan, but now she thinks that while death might still be on the table, it likely won't be with those mushrooms. She thinks she might have overlooked more info the first time and decides that she has to go back right now. As she's leaving, she runs into Oriana. Her stepmother is displeased with her and accuses her of trying to start nonsense. Jude is frustrated that it's the first thing that Oriana always jumps to, but also admits that right now Oriana is correct. At Belkin's estate, she goes in and starts acting like a servant. There's a mildly tense moment when Belkin comes out for summer and she worries that he's going to recognize her. I think I mentioned this in an earlier chapter, but these fairies treat their human servants like absolute dirt. Of course, he's not going to pay attention to the mind-controlled humans running around. She eventually goes back to his study. Now that she's been studying plants more, she looks at the stuff he has in jars around the room with new eyes. She sees a few things that are poisonous, but none of those mushrooms, probably because he's not that stupid. Jude searches the notes but can't find much of anything that would incriminate Belkin even the slightest, and even then she feels frustrated because she put herself in further danger for what turned out to be nothing at all. As she's leaving, she randomly decides that she has to help one of the mind-controlled human maids, the same girl she'd seen during her first visit. She stuffs salt down the girl's throat, which breaks the spell put over her. Except, unlike Jude, she wasn't given the ability to see things over here. I presume the only thing she can really see is Jude. Jude asks the girl her name, Sophie, and orders her to not cry. Jude then walks up to the guards and says that Carden has asked for the two of them. The guards don't seem to like this much, but eventually agree under the condition that they carry the message to the prince that he's to bring both girls back alive this time. Obviously, what everybody wants to hear. She steers Sophie out from the estate, but curses her poor timing and bad luck. Carden and his sister are coming back from a ride. If they don't see her, the guards will likely ask about the two serving girls and tip him off that something's going on. But somehow or another, Jude gets Sophie away from there, even though Sophie has a little breakdown about the entire thing. I'm not sure if she wants to go back or if she's simply so terrified of what lies ahead that she'd rather go back and face whatever punishment might happen. Once they're more or less safe and away from Balkan's estate, Sophie explains what happened to her, that she was at a music festival and some guy had offered her a well-paying job waitressing. However, Jude sees the ruse for what it is, a fairy who lured her in with shrimp cocktail. Jude explains that her sister can help Sophie to get back to the other side where she'll be able to get in touch with the police and find her way back home. Jude gets Sophie back to Maddox's estate where she leaves her in the stables. Inside, she tells Vivi about what happened. Vivi is only surprised that this is the only thing Jude did and that she hasn't killed anybody. She tries to go to Sophie alone, but Jude insists that Sophie is scared and will be scared of Vivi. Before they go back outside, Vivi pulls Jude aside and pointedly tells her that their mother is dead, that Sophie is not a stand-in for the mother that Jude failed to save a decade earlier. Jude insists that she knows this, but I'm a little on Vivi's side right now. This was thoughtless and stupid. Back in the stables, it takes some convincing to get Sophie up onto a horse. They tell her that it won't be long before she's back in the human world. Sophie tells them that she'd always wished that magic was real, but only nice stuff like Santa and the Easter Bunny and Tinkerbell. None of this nonsense with murder fairies who put spells over humans to imprison them. Eventually, they get Sophie onto the magic horse, but as they go to cross the sea, Sophie intentionally slips over sideways and falls into the water. Alrighty then. Chapter 18. I wake up groggy. I cried myself to sleep and now my eyes are swollen and red, my head pounding. The whole previous night feels like a feverish, terrible nightmare. I honestly don't know what she'd been expecting. There was no way that Sophie's life would have been good after being rescued, and it's not like she can go to either the police nor a therapist about any of what happened to her. This is for sure one of those things where the good intention was there, but it was too impulsive. Jude had no plan for the rescue, and that's why it failed so much. She wasn't even going to help Sophie once she was free. If you ask me, it was likely only a matter of time until Sophie did off herself. She only did it in front of Jude. One of Dain's servants comes to fetch her, saying that Dan is waiting downstairs for her. Tatterfield tries to send him away, at least until she can make Jude presentable, but the servant is under strict orders to deliver Jude to Dan, no matter what her state is. Jude then kicks herself because, of course, word got round about what she did. However, when she goes to the stairs and Dan starts in on her, it's not about kidnapping the servant away. Oh, there's a Princess Bride quote for you. How dare you kidnap what I've rightfully stolen? No, Dan is angry that Jude stabbed... What's his face? Honestly, the second that Carden's friends are off the page, I literally forget that they exist. Don't expect me to remember their names. It's also not helping that nobody gives his name here either. If the author can't be bothered to care, why should I? Anyway, Dan is angry, claiming that she's his to command, that she isn't allowed to randomly strike people even if they do try to hurt her. He then tosses his blade to the ground and commands her to pick it up. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to put the blade through your hand. When I ask you to do that, I want you to remember where your bones are, where your veins are. I want you to stab through your hand, doing the least damage possible. I don't even know any of that. I could try to make a guess, but I still think that I would do a lot of damage regardless. Unless this book is trying to tell me that fairies go crazy into depths about the medical structure of one's hands. However, this was never about actually injuring Jude, it was about a show of control. He releases his magic hold over her before she stabs herself, but then she realizes that no, she isn't off the hook, she's supposed to do it of her own free will. I hesitate. Of course I hesitate. This is absurd. This is awful. This isn't how people show loyalty. This is epic, epic bullshit. I seriously don't know what she expected was going to happen. She wanted this. This behavior isn't exactly new or different. All of the fairies are sociopaths, every single last one of them, and she wanted to stay there with them. She then proceeds to stab herself in the hand. Do not reveal your skill with the blade, he says. Do not reveal your mastery over glamour. Do not reveal all that you can do. Show your power by appearing powerless. This is what I need from you. I understand exactly what he's asking from her, but at the same time, Jude literally told him that the other dude tried to command her to jump to her death. What the hell is she supposed to do about nonsense like that? Simply kill herself to keep her cover? Wow, brilliant plan there, Dan. I don't know why, but I was kind of expecting for him to whip out some sort of healing ability and actually tend to her hand. Instead, he tells her to put some moss on it. Moss! Don't these people have literal magic? Freaking moss! Don't talk to me about the healing properties of moss when magic exists in this world. Before either of them can say anything else, Oriana comes in. She's startled to see Dan there and was under the impression that the servants had been wrong about reporting that he was there. She tries to invite him to stay for tea under the idea that something Jude did upset him, which isn't wrong, but not for the reasons she thinks. However, Dan is quick to leave. Jude goes back to her room where she thinks about the upcoming month-long coronation celebration, mainly to distract herself from the pain of her hand. After a while, Vivi comes in. They dance around the subject of Sophie briefly before Jude goes for the jugular of Heather. Vivi says that Heather has seen her pointed ears and thinks that they're one of those human modifications. Jude thinks that Heather is either lying to Vivi or is kind of stupid. Taryn calls her sisters downstairs to say that their new dresses have arrived. Jude goes only to find that it's not the dress the dressmaker had sketched in their other chapter. Everybody seems a little baffled over it, especially Jude. The dress reminds her a lot of the dresses in Locke's mother's closet. Oriana then calls the girls to her and reminds them that there's going to be a lot of people from different courts who have come to swear allegiance to Dan. That while they are under Maddox's protection, they aren't going to be doing stupid things that could get them ensnared somehow. She goes on to pointedly tell them that she would keep them at home, but Maddox insisted. She proceeds to kiss the three of them in a motherly way. When she kisses Jude, she warns her not to aspire above her station. Jude is embarrassed when she realizes Oriana thinks that Jude is sleeping with Dan, which, that's honestly on Dan. What did he expect was going to happen when he showed up and sequestered himself away with Jude? As Jude tries to explain that she and Dan aren't romantically involved, Oriana goes on. She says that she was once in the harem of King Eldred. She then goes on to explain that it was basically a mixture of sorority-level drama meets politics. Jude suddenly feels like maybe all of Oriana's worrying over the girls wasn't for nothing but her own lived experiences. She then makes Jude promise that if she comes down with Dan's child that she has to tell Oriana first. Probably to get an abortion, as you might expect. Jude is like, yeah, alright, Mummy, I'll tell you, while inwardly wincing over the entire thing. Outside, Jude asks if Tara knew about Oriana's history. But as she does this, she thinks about how Oriana's story about one of the king's lovers getting pregnant but then dying under mysterious circumstances. It also lines up with the death of Locke's mother and the facts Locke knew about her being the king's lover. Again, Oriana is right to worry about Jude getting pregnant. Taryn then asks if Jude knows anything about why Belkin is there. She obviously doesn't, but begins to worry anyway. Later that night, Jude is waiting for Ghost to show up to give her another lesson. However, instead of Ghost, it's Valerian. This is my home. None of this is your home, he tells me, voice shaking with anger. I mean, this is Maddox's home, yes, so get the F out. Anyway, they go back and forth for a little bit. But he's drunk and so blind with rage that Jude simply existing is seriously pissing him off. They fight for a little bit before Jude has a moment of, I'm not going to die here and now simply because Dan ordered me to appear as a damsel in distress, which is not only fair, but I also said it earlier. So she stabs him in the chest, which is one of those moments where it's like, she's already stabbed you once, why the hell would you go back for seconds, dude? Before he dies, he starts to put a curse over her, and I'm not sure if it's actual magic or simply one last F you to her, and then he dies. Jude sits there for several minutes, simply observing the body. She wants to wait until Ghost shows up and then asks for his help in hiding the body, but then she realizes that the last thing she needs is the Court of Shadows getting involved with this the night before Dan's coronation, so she rolls the body under her bed for now, since Ghost is still supposed to show up eventually. Chapter 19. Ghost takes Jude to where the coronation is set to take place tomorrow. As the servants finish getting everything ready, Ghost and Jude walk up among the rafters and the roots. As they go, Jude's mind is drawn back to Valerian's body under her bed. She informs the readers that fairies don't decompose the way humans do and wishes that she could come back to find him turned into mulch under her bed. Ghost eventually tells her that they're there to kill what's likely a would-be assassin that's sent to kill Dan. After waiting around for a couple of pages, somebody super suspicious shows up below them. Under Ghost's supervision, Jude aims her crossbow and kills the person. They're forced to draw back into the shadows after that, but as they're hiding, Ghost asks if she's ever killed anybody before and congratulates her for not doing something like vomiting. However, Jude's mind is on what Valerian said to her before he died: "May death be your only companion." She also thinks about how Maddox keeps insisting that Jude isn't a killer, and now she's killed 2 people within the span of a few hours. Eventually, things settle down below them, so Ghost and Jude feel safe in heading out. But as they get a little closer to the dead body, Jude can see some things that she couldn't see from their hiding spot. For some reason, Jude is under the impression that this woman is likely one of Maddox's spies, not Balkin's. Ghost grabs a note off from the body and curses over what it says: "Kill the bearer of this message." He's of the opinion that this was a setup courtesy of none other than Balkin himself. However, as they leave, Jude can't help but wonder where Maddox fits into all of this. When Jude gets home, she buries Valerian in the meadow behind her stepfather's estate where his dogs won't find it. She mainly complains about how hard it was to drag Valerian to the spot. Later, everybody gets ready to go to the first day of the celebrations. Even Vivi is going, although she insists that it's so that she can gossip with Princess Rihanna and see all of the different royals in one place. Vivi is also curious to find out who Terrance's mysterious suitor is. Neither of the girls have the faintest idea who it might be. After a while, Maddox comes in and sends Vivi from the room. He offers Jude a beautiful knife called Nightfell. As he goes on, he eventually tells her that it had been forged by her biological father, Justin. Jude is rather taken aback, since not once in the past decade has Maddox ever once said the name of her father, let alone given any information about him. Jude asks that her father wasn't fairy, to which Maddox agrees, that even Maddox still has a few pieces from Justin, that there's a magic knife for Terran as well. He goes on to say that it was Justin who convinced their mother to run away back to the mortal world. She decides that she has to try her luck while Maddox is talking about her parents, as she asks what her mother was like. He explains that she was happy and loved to drink and dance, but that the wars kept Maddox away from her more than he would have liked. Maddox goes on to explain about Justin's background as well, that he trained for years in the mortal world to become a master blacksmith, but it was never good enough, and after a while he started searching for the fairies. He was a master smith when he came here and even better when he left, but he couldn't resist bragging about stealing her secrets along with his bride. Eventually the tale came back to Balkin, who gave it to me. However, Maddox expresses a lot of grief over having killed Jude's parents, mainly because he now has his dad to Jude in turn, which I think he kind of regrets. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book. Snark's always free and updated every morning. Newly added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same thing on Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more books starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn and Phoebe for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too, but not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions about my editing services, including pricing options. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. I'll see you next week, guys.